time being, the ceasefire remains in place?
It's unbelievably weak. I would call it the weakest right now. After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. I said, I'm not going to waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support. They understand these are all medical people. Dr. Oz, life support is not a good thing. Do you agree?
Bad prognostic.
I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support, where the doctor walks in and says, sir, your loved one has approximately a 1% chance of living.
There you have President Trump talking about the ceasefire with Iran being on life support, as opposed to the reputation of this country, which is also on life support. And is it really a coincidence that President Trump rejected Iran's peace proposal on the same day CBS News aired their 60 Minutes episode with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in which he said that the war ain't over yet? Cenk, what do you think?
No, I don't believe it's a coincidence. So we're about to find out a couple of interesting things here. Number one, to what degree are we controlled by Israel? And we are now getting to 11 out of 10. Because of this story, you'll see the details here. And what is making Donald Trump go back into the war? Not just Israel, but his overconfidence on a couple of directions. So we'll talk about both of those things after Anna tells you which orders we've been given by Israel.
So in order to really understand this story, we're gonna just take a little dip in the Netanyahu interview pool. He was interviewed by Major Garrett on 60 Minutes, and he was asked by Garrett if the war is over, and if it isn't, who will decide when it is? Netanyahu responded with the following, quote, "The Iran war accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium, that has to be taken out of Iran. There are still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There are still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now we've degraded a lot of it, but all that is still there, and there's still work to be done." Okay, so basically that's his way of saying the war isn't over yet. He pretends to be concerned about the enriched uranium. That's always been a cover story. He doesn't care about the enriched uranium. He just wants to keep bombing Iran until he gets a failed state or a regime change. The other thing that he mentions are the ballistic missiles, as if a sovereign country doesn't have the right to have this type of weaponry in order to defend themselves, especially in a region of the world where they have a hostile country like Israel in existence. Now Garrett asked in response, so this war cannot end until all those things are eliminated? To which Netanyahu declared, can it end with, as President Trump has led now, a blockade, an economic pressure on them to do it with non-military means? Fine. If it can be accomplished, why not? But if not, both the United States and Israel, we both agree, President Trump and I, that if necessary, we can re-engage them militarily if it's necessary. Now, I want to be clear that re-engaging militarily will accomplish absolutely nothing. There's no indication that the United States would be able to retrieve that enriched uranium, besides which, obviously, that material has been separated and hidden in different areas of the country. On top of that, the enriched uranium isn't even something that the Israelis really give a damn about. Again, that was the cover story. There's no indication that Iran will stop with their ballistic missiles, nor should they. I wouldn't if I were Iran or a leader in Iran. So re-engaging militarily does absolutely nothing. It accomplishes absolutely nothing. But Netanyahu doesn't want the war to end, which is why I believe, yes, Cenk, Israel controls the United States when it comes to foreign policy, certainly 100%. And okay, fine, you want to re-engage. But I think Iran needs to rethink their strategy, and you need to make Israel cry uncle. Because the person who decides whether or not this war ends, unfortunately, is not the president of the United States. It's the prime minister of Israel. So make him cry uncle. That's what I think. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so two things. We're about to find out all together if it's 100%.
Let's please stop having these nonsensical debates.
Okay, it's not a debate. It's not a debate. Look, guys, I'm just telling you ahead of time, so you can see with your own eyes. So you don't have to trust anyone on it. You don't have to vote on a poll. You don't have to debate it. You're just gonna see it, right? If Trump says no, we're not going back in, then we're not 100% controlled by Israel, because Israel made it now crystal clear that they want us to go back in. On the other hand, if we do go back in, it's also crystal clear that we are 100% controlled by Israel, because we have no reason to go back in. I'm gonna come back to that in a second. We had no reason to go in the first place. But guys, at this point, it has become clear, and later in the program, we're gonna talk about even neocons are writing, checkmate. If we stay, if we leave, it's bad. If we stay in the war, it is an epic disaster, economic collapse impending. And Trump is willing to risk that. Why? It makes no sense other than Israel has ordered him, and he will do anything Israel orders him to do. Okay, so how are we going to go back in is the next question that we're gonna address. But first, I want you to know that his list of demands were not just the ones that Anna read. So yes, he says take out all their enriched uranium, but Iran has already offered that, to take it out of the country for 12 years. So what more do you want? That goes to what Anna said, which is they don't care about the enriched uranium, because Iran, this is their third time saying you could take out all the enriched uranium. They said it under Obama, they said it before the war started, and they're saying it right now in their latest offer. And every time Israel goes, no, rip it up, make sure that they can still have nukes, because that's our only excuse to go into this war, right? So it's definitely Israel keeping us in this war when Iran has overtaken us, take out. Enrichment facilities, Trump already said we destroyed all of them. We have to destroy all of their ballistic missiles? Are we gonna stay there decades? What kind of insane standard is that we destroy every missile? But on top of that, guys, he says Israel must be able to control Iran's foreign policy. Iran cannot interact with Hamas or Hezbollah or any other proxy that Israel doesn't want.
So apparently Trump is calling for unity after another violent incident. But the way this gets covered depends on who's trying to spin it and who's willing to call it out. On the right, the framing turns Trump into some kind of heroic victim, a uniquely important figure being targeted because he's just that powerful. On the left, the focus is on Trump's long, obvious relationship with violent rhetoric and the political climate he helped create. Same event, completely different narrative. And that is exactly why I recommend Ground News. It's a website and app that pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum so you can compare headlines side by side, see the bias distribution of the coverage, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even see who owns the outlets behind the reporting. Because once you start looking at coverage that way, it becomes a lot easier to see when the media isn't informing you, it's managing your perception. Ground News also has a blind spot feed, which highlights stories that one side of the political spectrum is barely covering at all, so you're not trapped inside the version of events your media bubble wants you to accept. If you're tired of being fed somebody else's narrative, I genuinely recommend Ground News. Go to ground.news/TYT or scan the QR code to get 40% off Ground News Vantage Plan.
No country is going to hand over their foreign policy to another country. That's insane. You put those insane, well, that's a good point. John gave me a little bit of look there, John's our stage manager, and I thought, well, we put our foreign policy in Israel's hands, but that's only because our politicians are bribed and blackmailed into it. But you would never do it voluntarily, right? So, okay, all of these standards are purposely impossible. And yes, Netanyahu added regime change back onto the table. So no.
Then you go get your regime change,
exactly.
Bitch. You go get your regime change, bitch. Okay, Major Garrett asked him, oh, you want to get the enriched uranium? Okay, great. Are you talking about US troops or Israeli troops? By the way, thank you for asking that question, Major. But the way he framed some of his other questions, I took issue with. Nonetheless, he asks, if it's necessary, meaning to get the enriched uranium, how do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran? Netanyahu responds, you go in and you take it, you take it out. He laughs. At that point, Major Garrett asks, with what? Special forces from Israel? Special forces from the United States working in tandem under international supervision? How? And here's what he says, because he means the US. He means US troops.
Of course.
He means the cannon fodder in our military. You know, the dispensable human beings that he uses and abuses to his liking. That's who Netanyahu is, scum of the earth. Iran needs to save some of that heat for Tel Aviv, okay? I get the tactics with hitting the Gulf region, especially with the latest reporting, by the way, showing that Abu Dhabi was secretly attacking Iran alongside Israel and the United States. That was reported
UAE
today.
Was,
yeah. The UAE, Abu Dhabi specifically though.
Okay,
yes.
yep.
All right, but let's get to what Netanyahu said in response to Major Garrett. He says, well, I'm not gonna talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, quote, I wanna go in there. I mean, he said that publicly. He said it, and I think he's right. Okay, so basically it's his way of saying the US obviously, because Trump, like a moron, says we have to go get the enriched uranium, essentially parroting the talking points, the bad faith talking points from the Israelis.
Yeah, and what he's trying to say is Trump's already on the record. Trump, you can't turn around. You already said it. And he continues, he said it, I think he's right. He's very committed to this. And I think that can be done physically, so obviously troops on the ground. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you go in and you take it out, why not? That's the best way. Well, first of all, we didn't ask why not, and although I can give you 1,000 excellent reasons, we asked whose forces. And look, Major Garrett, yes, I have tons of issues with how he conducted that interview. On the other hand, we got a lot of super relevant information out of that interview, and he's the only one that's asked, and he asked Netanyahu, US or Israeli troops, so attaboy. That was an excellent question. And you see Netanyahu saying, oh no, you guys are definitely going back in. He didn't say a word about Israeli ground troops.
That's exactly right. And look, it is not surprising to me that on the same day this interview with a notable war criminal was published, President Trump came out and flatly rejected Iran's peace offering. So Iran's proposal, which Trump again rejected on the same day Netanyahu's interview aired, made no mention of giving up their enriched uranium, right? So Iran is basically saying, okay, we can have a discussion about the enriched uranium in stage 2. But first stage, we're not talking about that. So here's what Trump said in response. I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it, totally unacceptable. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, foreign ministry spokesperson, the Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson, defended the Iranian proposal as reasonable and even called it generous. It includes an official end to the war, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, withdrawal of all naval vessels enforcing the US blockade on ships and cargo ships going to and from Iranian ports, lifting of all US sanctions, a ceasefire in Lebanon, and an additional 30 days of talks to iron out the details. And then after that phase of the peace deal is culminated, then they can have discussions about the enriched uranium. Iran says that all discussion of its nuclear program will be subject of subsequent negotiations. And the Iranian document, again, was in response to the 14-point proposal that the Trump administration provided the Iranians a little over a week ago, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Iran took their time in responding to that 14-point proposal, clearly. And that shows you that they don't really feel this sense of urgency, because they've got some cards to play, namely the Strait of Hormuz, and the fact that if kinetic war begins again, if they re-engage in that way, Iran has threatened to take out more oil and gas infrastructure in the Gulf, which Trump certainly does not want.
Yeah, so guys, you're not getting a full picture here in the US of how bad it is, because our press at a bare minimum keeps debating Trump's lies. So like, oh, is the war almost over? Tons of people think the war is almost over. In fact, Wall Street thinks the war is almost over. And Trump just today bragged about Wall Street's at record highs. The war hasn't hurt us at all. And it's encouraging him to go back in because he thinks there's been no consequence at all. So the idiots in Wall Street believing Donald Trump's lies because the media is saying like, could be, yeah, it could be that war's almost over. And it's not, the economic consequences are bad, but we can debate it. We can debate. No, guys. Gas has already gone up 50%. If we were covering this war like Fox News covers a Democratic president, every single cable news outlet would be like 50%, 55%. It's now gone up 60%, 65%. Oh my God, when is it gonna stop, right? And by the way, that would be somewhat justified. The price of gas is super important to the country, to all of us, to all of our families. But shh. Israel wants the war, so you're getting super muted coverage about how disastrous this war is.
I think the American people get it. Let me turn to the latest Washington Post ABC News poll. So a Washington Post ABC News Ipsos poll conducted in late April showed that Trump's war in Iran is as unpopular among Americans as the Iraq war was during the year of peak violence in 2006 and the Vietnam War in the early 1970s.
Yeah, so despite the media just kind of soft pedaling it, and by the way, the Democrats soft pedaling it.
Totally.
Other than Ro Khanna, I don't see any fire breathers out there going, what is this? Why did you do this to the American people? Why are you listening to Israel? This is insane, right? No, shh. Instead, they're attacking Israel's opponents like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Anyway, so that's another story we'll get to later. But guys, on the deal, this is really important. There's three clauses that I need to emphasize here. Iran offered up reopening the Strait of Hormuz immediately. That's actually an enormous concession by Iran. They should save that to the end if they were doing normal negotiations. Hey, you give me this, you give me that, then I'll open up the Strait of Hormuz, because that's not just their biggest piece of leverage, it's almost their only piece of leverage.
It's their only leverage.
But it's gigantic, so they're offering that up first. So we should take that and run. That's a great offer. Second of all, behind the scenes in their discussions, they've already offered to take out the enriched uranium for 12 years. So it's not like that's a real issue. So if we get to the next 30 days, we already know what their concession is. So like those are the only two things we want as America. In fact, their enriched uranium, we really don't care about at all. They're nowhere near a weapon, but fine, even if you were to concede that we care about that, they've already offered up on a silver platter. So you get to the third provision that is by far the most important out of all of this. Iran demands a ceasefire not only apply to Iran and to US and Israel and to the Gulf countries, but to Lebanon as well. And that's the deal breaker, because Israel wants southern Lebanon. That was an enormous point of this war. Distract everyone, destroy Iran, keep them busy so they can't help Hezbollah too much, and have American media perfect squirrel. Here's your war. Now, don't tell anyone what we're doing, the atrocities we're doing in Lebanon. So Israel is never gonna stop this war until they think they've solidified the theft of southern Lebanon.
No, look, Netanyahu isn't going to call for the end of the war unless he's incentivized to call for an end to the war. Iran is not going to give Netanyahu concessions. So give him a reason to want to end the war and read him between the lines.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.